When you first turn on your 650 display, it's going to automatically lock with your GPS, and if you have XM weather, your XM. So for instance, seeing this GPS in green, we know we have a live lock and we have 10 satellites. Same thing with XM. Of course, you only need one satellite for XM, and the stronger the signal gets, you'll get a green bar set to appear behind the XM indicator as well. For the rest of this video, I'm actually not going to use a live GPS. I'm going to put it in simulation mode because it'll just make it a lot easier to show things. To do that, you just tap over in this corner here, which brings up your menu. You go down to System and Settings, and we just want to hit Demo. As you can see, we are now in simulation mode by seeing the demo in the lower left-hand corner where you should have a live GPS. Dial in an airport here. Now what you see in the upper left-hand corner here is your magnetic heading, 075. That's what we should be flying. Currently, our track, which is our green extension line off the nose here, is at 175. So it's always as easy as flying to the triangle. So in this case, I turn to the left, which is pretty clear to see on the main screen as well. You can also see we've triggered a terrain alert. We have tower alerts as well. And if you get within 8 minutes and 500 feet of either a terrain or towers, you will get this alert, and you will get this red frame flashing around on the movie map screen. Now, in the case of towers, if you trigger a tower alert, they will physically appear on the screen in red as well. Below that is your next waypoint, or in this case, our destination. And below that, we've got our range, ground speed, and estimated time en route. A lot of systems out there just divide your ground speed into the distance. But of course, very often you're not going straight. You may be going around airspace or something else. So that's why we measure on your actual closure rate. So what you'd find is if you're a few degrees off, let's just go to another airport here, it's going to give you a slightly different time until you're exactly lined up. Directly below that is our altitude, our GPS altitude. And what you do is, if you want to see different information, right now we just have state borders on here. Just tap in the lower right hand corner, and that brings up your menu, and then tap this map button. And every time you tap this map button, you're going to get different layers of nav-aid data. Now, of course, you can customize these for specifically the way you want to view it. Now, the other thing is, if you want to change the range, go in the upper right hand corner here, and if you tap on the left hand side, you bring the range in, and when we say 50 miles, that's from the aircraft to this compass ring here. And if you tap on the right hand side, it's going to bring your range back out. Another thing you can do while you're flying, if you tap on a particular airspace, it'll give you the altitudes of an airspace. If you tap on a particular airport and select Direct To, it'll take you directly to that airport. Not only do you have control over the range with the left and right clicks up at the range indicator here, but in addition, if you want to display live weather, you just hit the Enter button. In the upper left-hand corner, it'll tell you what weather product you're looking at. In this case, it's NexRad, and it's 4 minutes old. Hit again, that would be CV for ceilings visibilities for METARs, the winds on the ground, temperature dew point spreads, lightning strikes, echo tops, winds aloft, infrared satellite imagery, and if you hit the Enter button again, you have one blank page. So basically, just as sort of a quick review, this changes your range in and out. You want to quickly pull up a different layer of navigational information. It's right on the screen here. Hit Enter, and that brings up the weather. So you have any combination of range, navigational information, and weather by pulling those up very quickly. Now, of course, there's a lot of other features as far as maps and different terrain backgrounds, and we'll get into that more in a minute. The way the satellite status indicators work is it'll be in one of three colors for the GPS and the XM receiver. Green, of course, means go and everything's working just fine. But for instance, if you see GPS with a yellow background, that means the GPS antenna is working fine. It's just that it's not receiving enough satellites to have a lock. Same would be true with XM. If you saw yellow, the receiver would be working fine, but the problem would be that you don't have a strong enough satellite signal. The other indicator is if it turns red, in this case for the GPS, that means it's treating it like it's physically disconnected from the hardware itself. So you have three colors for either of these indicators. Red means a hardware disconnection. Yellow means it's working fine, but it cannot receive enough satellites to have a proper signal. And green means everything is fine. We also have terrain and tower alerts. As you can see in this upper left-hand corner, that's telling you that you're within 8 minutes and 500 feet of terrain. There would be a different symbol here on the other side if it was for towers. You also have this red frame flashing around the screen to alert you as well. Now, of course, we're just looking at a black background here, but you do have a lot of other options in here. Just hit the nav key, go into terrain, and you can turn the terrain alert on. That's one option. Another option is you can actually turn on the background map. Or you can turn on both of them simultaneously, like this. With this different background, of course, the same still holds true, where if you hit the map key, you display different navigational information over the top of it here. Or you can pull up weather, live weather on top of it. You have a number of different ways you can change your screen. What you do is you just go in here, hit the nav key, and let's go down to map settings first. This first setting at the top here allows you to display north up if you'd rather, center the aircraft on the screen, place the compass rose down at the bottom, or bring it up to the top. Of course, you can also remove the compass rose entirely if you want. You do have another option here that lets you go to the full screen mode and just basically gives you more mapping area as well. The rest of the options below here we'll go into a little more detail later. In addition, of course, you can display whatever navigational information you want to see on the screen right now. You can go in here and you can change the terrain background. All these things are independent of each other. So you can have your terrain alert on here. You can have both of them. Another option is you can go in here, and this will show you all the charts you're flying over right now. So for instance, that's the VFR terminal chart around the Class B airspace. You do have the option where you can make this as big or as small as you want. You just grab the map here. You can move it around if you want to look at a particular area. Let's say you move off to one section and you sort of lost the plane. Just double tap the enter button and it'll center the plane again. To get out of the screen, tap in the upper left hand corner where that X is. Of course, you've also got a lot of other choices too, not just the VFR terminals and your sectionals, but the high and low altitude and route charts as well. Once again, tap in the upper left-hand corner and you're on the main screen again. You, of course, have another mapping option as well. Just go in here and select 3D settings. you can turn the 3D terrain on. Just remember though, all these settings are independent of each other, so you can get any combination of what we've been looking at here. We have another background map as well. And let's say you're flying IFR or you're flying at night and you had an engine problem and you could just not make it to the closest airport. In that case, what you can do is go back into the nav menu under terrain, and we have satellite imagery. What this will do is it'll show you the actual fields, trees, and buildings below you, so you can have a better idea of what areas to head for. You can see the roads here, and you can see these little areas, these neighborhoods. So clearly this area right here would be a good place to land. But it's really helpful in giving you a good idea of what's around you in case you do have to land in an emergency. And it will show you more than enough detail as far as large enough areas to do a safe landing. The way the menus are laid out is the nav key primarily gives you information about terrain as far as how you would want to display it. The info key gives you information about airports and nav aids. The message key is really only used if you have traffic, and it would have some traffic options in there. The weather key is really only used if you need to customize the layers of weather that you look at, because in terms of just viewing your weather, all you really need to do is hit the enter button. And the direct to key is for selecting airports to go direct to or selecting a flight plan. Let's just go in a little more detail into the nav key here under map settings. Right here you have an option of flight path, either track line, off, or course line. The difference is if you have a track line basically think of it as snapping a chalk line from point A to point B. So it'll show you if you vary off of that line anywhere during your flight to the left or to the right of the line. Some people like to look at it that way. If you turn it off, it's not going to give you any information at all as far as how you're deviating from your direct to point. Course line is a little bit different. That means while you're flying here, if you vary to the left or to the right, it's going to constantly update and show you the shortest point between where you are and where you're going. Runway extenders, you can set this, if you turn it on as it is here, this will only apply to the particular airport that you're looking at, as in you're flying to. Now, you can set it for 45-degree angle, which means this will give you the 45-degree extensions for the downwind for that runway at the airport. And that's pretty useful if you're flying into an uncontrolled airport and just not that familiar with the area. You can, of course, turn it off, but if you turn it on, it'll be the extensions directly off of the runway. And in any of those cases, the extensions will be at the very end, it'll tell you the runway it is referring to. You can turn the VOR compasses on and off. Let's just take a look at the VORs. Yeah, so what this does here is this will actually show you your to and from settings off of a particular VOR. So you can turn that off if you wish. Below that is the range ring. And what this does is this places a little ring around your aircraft. Some people like to have this just to kind of, maybe some of you want a 20-mile ring just to let you know that's about 10 minutes ahead of where you normally fly. And then, of course, there's the auto zoom option. If you hit that, it's just going to have your next waypoint always at the top of the screen. Go back in here again, and this time we go down to display settings. It allows you to change the icon of your plane. Several different settings here. As far as the highway color, let's just go here so you can see what we're talking about. So you can set it to a couple different settings like that, whichever you like best. Next below that is filters. So for instance, in this case, we want to display all the airports from where we are all the way out to 500 miles. These are private airports below here, and we only have that set at 5 miles. Remember, military airports are classified as private as well. So you just got to decide what setting you want for that. If you set it out too far out, what's going to happen is there's just so many private airports, the screen can become really cluttered. Below this is the minimum runway that you want to see. Obviously, you're probably not interested in runways below the what you can actually land at. Although just remember, no matter what these settings are set up as, if you ever put it in direct to and select an airport, it'll always highlight that in yellow, even if it doesn't meet any of the criteria here. You can't filter out your waypoints for obvious reasons. And if we go right back in here, you can see you can also set the distance that you want to view your nav aids at. And basically what this means, you'll see all VORs out to 500 feet. And this zoom setting means that if you zoom out to 500 feet, it gets rid of a lot of the VORs, because at that point it's just a solid mass of color. Most of these defaults have been set already based on the way most people want it. So you'll probably normally not need to go in here unless you really want to customize it a little bit differently. When you first get the 650, it's going to have a number of different navigational layers as overlays. But if you don't need some of these, or want to change some of these, or just add some completely different ones, you certainly can do that. And the way you do that is you go in here into display settings, and that's what we call the layers. So you can have any combination of airports, class airspace, special use, NDBs, intersections, fixes, VORs, airways, jetways, arrivals, departures, parachute jumping areas, obstacles, temporary flight restrictions, although you'll only get the temporary flight restrictions if you have a live XM weather feed, highways, hydrographics, which basically means lakes, and borders, state borders. And the last one here is path, which will basically just draw out a path of where you have flown. Now, any particular layer you're on, when you go into this page, it'll show you what's being shown in this layer. So really, this is sort of our blank black layer that really just shows the state borders, and then TFRs we'd want to see on that. And this is sort of the layer that we use a lot if you're going to be viewing weather, especially the METARs, the graphics on the screen, because there's a lot of information, and so you kind of want a clean background for most of that. But you can change it however you want. Let's say you didn't want this layer. All you would do is hit delete, and it would be gone. Let's say you want to create a new layer. Let's just say we want to create a layer that has parachute jumping areas and intersections. It'd be sort of a strange combination, but let's say that's what you want. And you don't want the state borders, so you remove that. You don't really want to see the lakes, and you want to leave the TFRs on there. So we have those three things. We want to hit insert page, and it's letting you know it's accepting that, and you hit OK. And so now when we go through the mapping layers here, there is going to be one layer that's going to have that information on there. And of course, you can go right back in. If you decide that's not what you want, you can delete it. Let's say you're flying along and you want some airport information. In order to do that, you would just come up here and pick Info and select, in this case, we want to see airports. Now, because we were flying to Tulsa, it defaults over here as Tulsa, as if to ask you, is that the one you want to see information for? Let's just say in this case it is. So we just want to tap, not inside this gray box, tap off to the right here, and it'll lock that in. And now you can look at a live map of Tulsa, and you can actually see there's some storm activity down to the lower right-hand corner here. You can also pull up the METARs. You can pull up the TAFs. You can pull up the remarks, all kinds of comm information here, as well as facility information. And obviously, it's got the airport diagram and all your instrument approach charts as well. And it tells you whether your data is current or not. In this case, it is current. Let's just say we actually want another airport information. Just tap over here, and we click in that gray area. And so we put in the first letter, and let's just say it's this airport here. So we want to enter, and it'll just pull up all the live information for that particular airport. See, they've got a METAR here as well as the TAF and their facility information. To get out of the screen, just tap in the upper left-hand corner, and you're back on the main screen here. Another thing you can do is tap at a particular airport, hit Info, and it brings you right there for the same information. You can also see here, you can pull up other information for NDBs and VORs as well. Once again, tap at the upper left-hand corner on the top where it's white, brings you back to the main screen. Obviously, you can change the range if you want to see further ahead, but maybe you would like to pan further ahead on this main screen, but you want to keep it at a range of about 50 miles. Just tap at the top of the screen, and it'll bring you forward your flight path here. You can see maybe there's weather up ahead or whatever. Now to get out of this, tap in the upper left-hand corner here, and it'll bring you right back to where you started. Let's say we want to create a flight plan. To do that, you would hit the nav key and go down to flight plan. We want to create one. First thing you do is you've got to give it a name. Enter that. Now you have to add any combination of airports, VORs, NDBs, intersections, or customized waypoints that you've created. In this case, let's add an airport. And you can either tap right on the screen like that and hit enter over here. Or if the airport might be a little further away, tap in the gray area and hit the first letter. And very often it'll pull it up as the closest to you. Let's go back in here and do a couple more. In this case, we have to hit the second letter to pull up the proper airport. Okay, these are the 4 waypoints that we've added. Now all you do is tap at this white part of the screen, and that removes the menu. And let's just go to a blank screen here. So you can see now that this is the flight plan we've created. Okay, let's say we're flying our flight plan and the weather's gotten worse than we thought. So you pull up the next rad here, you can clearly see this is not good. So we want to modify our flight plan. What you would do is just hit direct to. We want to modify the flight plan. And what this will always show you is your every point in your flight. Okay, this is the one that's highlighted is always the one you're flying to right now. And do we want to insert something before, add something after? Do we want to replace this point or remove this point? Well, we want to, let's say, replace this point, okay? And we want to do it with an airport. Let's just put in KM and close this window out. And you can see now that we've modified it to skip around the storm. Obviously, you have a number of other choices with your flight plan, such as reversing it here. And you would go into the direct to initially when you get to the airport if you want to select among all the flight plans that you've saved. Let's say you're flying along and you'd like to select an approach. To do that, just go into airport here, put in the first letter of the identifier. Let's say we want to go to runway 2, and that has 2 approaches. Let's select the RNAV approach on that. Enter. And then let's pick this initial approach fix right here and enter. So it's giving you all the information for your approach right here on the screen. You can see your entire approach laid out here, and you can see we've actually already triggered some tower alerts in the area. Now if you want to look at your approach chart, just go in here and hit info, and it automatically brings the chart up here. Now we've got it magnified quite a bit. Really, we provide all of the altitude information on the screen that you would need to fly the approach. The only piece of information we don't apply on the main screen is your final altitude down here. So as you can see, obviously depending on the category, it's different all over the place. We don't, of course, have to have the chart that size. You can put it to any size you want and just grab it and move it around to look at whatever you need on here. Just tap in the upper left hand corner 2 times and you're back on the main screen. Now let's just fast forward a bit to the next segment of the actual approach, because once you get on the actual approach segments, it's going to show you the highway and the sky, and so you'll be able to see the altitudes at all of the segments. You'll be able to see the altitudes of all the segments. So if you go in here and turn the 3D on, now you can see the highway in the sky. The picture frame's off to the left here. As we blow up the 2D view here, you can see why we're just a little to the right. Okay, so once we center it here, you'll see that we're just about right through the center of these boxes. These boxes are not very big. They are only about 150 feet wide. So the best way to fly an approach is use the 2D to make sure you're on the line segment, but then use the boxes to sort of tweak your flight through. You can also see past these boxes on this particular segment to Helm here that you're going to drop down quite a bit on the next segment. Let's just go back here and check for a second and see what our minimum is going to be. Let's just say in this case it's going to be 6,600. Okay, so you just continue flying until you get to this segment right here, and what we'll do is we'll just speed it up a bit and we'll jump ahead in simulation mode. Now you can see the box is quite a bit below us, and you can see right here we've got to be at above 6,800 feet, and we're quite a bit higher than that. Now we continue to fly, and now in this case you can see that the runway is about it's about 6 miles, the threshold way, and the 3D view is giving you the view that you would see if you were flying and just looking right out the window. But you can magnify this, and to do that, just go in here and you can really zoom way in. This is kind of helpful if you're flying an approach on a long final and you want to see how you're lining up with the threshold of the runway. In reality, if you looked out the window, you might not even be able to see the airport, but you could certainly see the threshold right here. So as we continue to fly in, the approach right here, you can see every time you see a green box, that means it's another waypoint. In this case, Alanka, and the final red box is at the threshold of the runway. Now we can drop down a little bit more, not a whole lot, once we go across this threshold here. So let's just go in here and fast forward again. So now you would just drop down to your 6,600 roughly. And you can see exactly how you're lining up with the runway. Of course, another thing to remember is you do not have to have the 3D setting on. You can completely fly the approach on just 2D alone. Now as we approach the threshold of the runway, let's say
we just didn't see the runway. Well, what's going to happen is the minute you fly over the threshold here, it's going to trigger the missed approach, which is just done here. It's now telling us you have to climb to 9,000 feet. In this case, it's straight ahead. You can see our holding pattern over here. So why don't we do that? So this is how you would fly an approach. You can display the attitude indicator a number of different ways. Bring up the menu, select nav, and over here you've got a side menu for the gyro. We click on that, and we have it turned off now. You basically have three choices in the menus here. One is to recalibrate it, which when you start it up on the ground, sometimes you need to recalibrate it, not too often, but you would just click on that and it would automatically run a 20-second process that zeroes everything out. The menu below this is auto pop-up, and what this does is, and you can just turn it on or off, but if your plane exceeds certain parameters in pitch or roll during flight, it's going to pop the attitude indicator up in the corner of the screen to alert you and just let you know, do you really intend to be doing this right now? And of course the reason for that is, let's say you're flying IFR and your primary instrumentation is slowly going bad on you, and so people, of course, you would tend to follow your attitude indicator, your mechanical one, and if it's going bad on you, you slowly get in an unusual situation, and what this will do is it'll alert you before you get in an unusual attitude. And we just go up here and we can turn on the corner here. You can always have it in the corner here as one option, or you can go back in here and let's say we just turn it off. You can also view it on the 3D terrain. And to do that, just select nav, go over here to settings, we just turn it on, and there's your view in 3D. You can actually turn on both if you want, although there really wouldn't be an advantage to doing it, but you do have that option available.
If you have XM weather, all you need to do to view the weather is come in here and hit the enter button. Every time you hit the enter button, you'll get a different layer of weather, and it will tell you in the upper left hand corner what the weather layer is. In this case, it's an XRAD and it's 4 minutes old. Go back down here and hit enter again. This will give you your ceilings and visibilities. What's good to do here is go to a blank navigational layer by hitting the map key here, and it'll make it a lot easier to see a lot of this weather information because there's a fair amount of it. Right here is your ceilings and visibilities for your weather graphics. What this is telling us is the ceiling condition, the visibility condition, the amount of precipitation and the type of precipitation, as well as the age of the report. To do that, what we would do is, let's just pick out ROW here. The vertical bar represents the ceiling condition and the horizontal bar represents the visibility. It comes in 4 colors. Green would mean VFR, yellow marginal VFR, red IFR, and magenta low IFR. So at ROW here, you've got a low IFR ceiling and IFR visibility. You've got the same over here at ATS. You've got solid low IFR over here. And why don't we just move over a bit? Look at some other ones here. Now, over here, you've got RA, which would stand for rain, and it comes in 3 colors. Green would be light rain, yellow, as in over here, would be moderate rain, and red would be heavy rain. You'll also see the same designation for snow. It would just be SN, but with the same colors, and either no pluses or a single plus for moderate or 2 pluses for heavy. Some other airports you'll see NP. What that means is there's no precipitation at that airport, and that airport does actually report precipitation. Some airports don't report precipitation to begin with, so you don't really know. If you don't see the NP there, you don't know if it's really raining or not. The other thing is, you notice these identifiers are in different colors, and what that means is the age, actual age of the METAR report itself. If it's green, it's a half an hour or less. If you see the METAR identifier in yellow, it's a half an hour to an hour, and if you see it red, it's in excess of an hour. So that would be your ceiling visibility page. And of course, if you go in here into info, you can pull up a specific airport and go over to the weather tab here and see your METAR and your TAF reports. So you still get the text, but what's important with this is it allows you to see the graphics, sort of the bigger picture of what the weather conditions are. And you can see over here to the left here, we've got a number of airports that are reporting VFR. But right where we're heading through now is pretty solid IFR. Now, if you could just go down here, hit the Enter key again, this would be the winds. Now, this is the winds on the ground. Once again, if it's green, the winds are very light and variable. If they're yellow, they would be moderate. And if they're in the red, they'd be strong and gustier. So you can see this whole area here is really, really light and variable. Very few exceptions to that. Hit the Enter button again here. Now we bring up the temperature dew point spreads. This is really helpful because you may have lots of areas where the airports are reporting VFR, but maybe they're kind of on the margin, and it's entirely possible in the next hour or two the conditions will go down such that you're going to be in IFR. So you can see the bigger map here. See all these red blocks? All these airports right here have marginal temperature dew point spreads at 6. You see it opens up a bit over here, 7 to 10. But you can see it's quite a substantial area here, that even though it's reporting VFR at some of these airports, there's not a huge margin. Another thing that you see on the screen is the airspace. It's yellow and red and flashes between the two colors. What that is a temporary flight restriction. Of course, you could come up here, you could display your airspace on top of it if you wanted to. But in terms of this, just go to the blank screen again. You see temporary flight restrictions that get updated every 12 minutes. If you just touch it with your finger, it'll tell you it's from the ground up to 14,500. And it was instituted on December 15th. Just touch in the upper left-hand corner here to remove that. Go back in here and hit the Enter key again. These are the echo tops. And what this does is it shows you what cloud cover is at different altitudes here. So you see in this case we've gone up to 24,000 feet, which was our service ceiling in this aircraft. And now it automatically alternates down to 3,000 feet and it's working its way up again. So you can get a good idea how high you would have to be to actually get over this. You can also bring up lightning strikes. In this case, we actually don't have any lightning today to show. But what it's going to do is every 5 minutes, it's going to update the screen with the latest lightning strikes. And it will keep the lightning strikes on the screen for 20 minutes before they fade out. Go back in here, hit Enter again. And let's bring up the winds here. What this is showing us is the winds at 6,000 feet. There's a number of different ways you can view the winds information. You can see that the arrows are being displayed on the screen here. You can go in here and hit the weather key and select settings. And it lets you explicitly select a particular altitude to look at if you want. Or you can go in here and you can have it automatically set to auto. And what auto does is it pulls up the closest altitude to what you're flying at. Or you can put it through cycle, and it'll cycle through all the winds at the different altitudes up to your maximum altitude. when you get the flight sheet, you're going to want to put in your maximum altitude because there's a lot of weather information related to winds above that altitude that you're not going to be interested in if you obviously can't climb above it. So you want to put the cap in at your maximum altitude here. So if you know this wind information is fine, but really all we care about is what's the best flight level to be at. To do that, you would just go in here with the weather key again. You have a right arrow to bring you over to another menu. And this is computing automatically the performance of your plane. And it takes into account how much fuel you burn to climb at the different altitudes as well. So what it's telling you here is right now at current altitude, which is 10,000 feet, it's going to take you 4 hours and 37 minutes to get there, and you're going to burn about 83 gallons. You can see if you drop down a little lower, it would actually add an hour and 18 minutes on top of your time, and look at the difference in fuel burn. Reverse is also true. If you climb a little bit higher, you can see that if you can get up to 18,000 feet, you're going to shave 22 minutes off of that 4 hours and 34 minutes. And you're going to save quite a bit of fuel. Just that savings right there is almost $50 worth of fuel. And what you'll see is just because you have a tailwind, flying higher isn't necessarily better. And this is really good at weeding out the exact altitude, which is going to be the absolute most fuel efficient for your entire flight. Of course, sometimes you're going to be in a situation where the fuel burn isn't much different between two altitudes, but maybe the time savings is. So you just end up making a judgment what's more important, getting there faster or saving a little bit extra fuel. To remove that menu, just tap in the upper left-hand corner here. If you hit the enter button again, it'll also bring up a blank screen that will not show any weather, because obviously you don't want to see the weather on the screen all the time. Just go back in here and hit enter one more time. We brought up some NextRad here. The only time you go in here for the weather key is certain weather products have things you can customize. For instance, the NextRad would be one of those, where you turn on the animation and it'll show you the last half an hour worth of NextRad. See it in the upper corner here, counting off, and you can see how it's moving. Aside from that, you do have the option, you could go in here and customize specific weather layers. Let's say you want one layer where you get the NextRad and the lightning on at the same time. So you would go in here and you would set them up and customize them. This last thing down here, this is constantly talking to your XM weather receiver, and it lets you know whether the receiver is working. If you don't have it plugged in or powered on properly, it'll tell you that as well. If it's working, but let's say XM has accidentally deactivated you, which is actually somewhat of a common problem they've had over the years, it will tell you exactly what is going on here. In this case, you can see it's working fine. We received weather 0.2 minutes ago. We just click on this to return to TrueMap.
If you've interfaced with the XRX traffic alert, we display traffic information on the main screen in a number of different ways. Over here you can see that we're 0.6 miles away from traffic that's 500 feet below us. Of course, we can give you much more detailed information as well. And to do that, we just go in here and select the message key and go into this menu here and turn the traffic on in the corner. So we can see we've actually got two aircraft. We've got one aircraft that's virtually right below us, only 2.2 miles away from us, and 600 feet below us. He's descending just very slightly. And we have another piece of traffic here that's just floating off of the screen. The traffic will be shown in one of three colors. It'll be shown in green for the least threat, yellow for medium threat, and red for a high threat.